Liftoff in 3, 2, 1.
Hello, and welcome to the Moving Right Along podcast, the podcast that's all about young writers, created by young writers. We're your hosts, Ruby,
Kat, and Ray. Now, before we get started, we're going to tell you a little bit about what this podcast actually is. So, we're called the Moving Right Along podcast, and we were created by the Young Writers Initiative. And if you don't know what that is, the Young Writers Initiative is a nonprofit organization that provides free services to young writers such as beta reading, alpha reading, editing, and trust me, much more. You can find out more about them on their website at www.tYWI.org.
And if you're wondering what this podcast is about, well, don't worry anymore because I'm going to tell you. It's all about creating a safe space for writers, especially like young writers, and exploring new writing topics without being all stuffy and uptight about them. The kind of concept of this podcast is that we're exploring space to like find new writing topics with you guys. And now we're going to talk a little bit about who we are, if you're wondering who we are. So here's a little bit about us hosts.
So to start us off, hi, I'm Ray, I'm 14, I use they, he, she pronouns, and I've been nicknamed as Death Ray by Kat and the rest of the Pod Squad. I write a lot of prose, but I'm also a huge filmmaking nerd, like an obsession, should probably stop, but you know what, will I? No. And my goal with this podcast is to inspire young creatives to dream big. I want to show everyone that they should never be afraid of their passion.
Hey, I'm Ruby. I'm 16. I'm known as the Hype Woman and the Golden Retriever person, which was given to me by Ray. Shout out to you.
I got you.
In regards to writing, I have what we could call a novel addiction. I literally cannot write a short story to save my life. And my goal with the podcast is just to bring happiness to even one person's day as they listen and get to grow alongside us as writers.
Hi, I'm Kat. My pronouns are she, her. I'm 19, and my known alias is the Evil Scientist, which I hope doesn't put any of you guys off. I'm only a little bit evil, like 10%, maybe 20 on Sundays. And I write basically everything from poetry to screenplays to novels, anything you can think of, I have tried it. And why I'm doing this podcast is because I want to motivate myself to write more than anything. It is an entirely selfish reason. I feel like if I have someone holding me accountable, like listeners, I can't be telling you guys, oh yeah, these are writing tips when I'm not even writing anything myself. So that's why I'm doing this podcast. So I hope you see now why I've earned the alias Evil Scientist.
Amazing. All right, so time to get into our topics for this episode. Our topics are plotting, planting, and pantsing. And for starters, what are those things? So just to start off with plotting is basically having a thought-out plan for your story, and usually that is done through an outline, which details basically just all the different plot points that are going to happen.
On the other hand, pantsing is the absence of a thought-out plot and the method of beginning a project with just a vague idea of a concept instead of a step-by-step outline.
And sitting right in the middle in between those two extremes is planting. So planting is a mix of both plotting and pantsing. Usually there's some sort of an outline for your story, but you're not really planning it down to the last detail. You have a lot of wiggle room to work with.
Yeah, and so looking at all of those, I mean, guys, it's pretty obvious. Plotting's the best.
Excuse me?
No.
You're excused.
Planting is obviously the best.
Guys, plotting is really
I think
good.
you're
No.
wrong. I think you've made a mistake there. I think you've got your head a bit
Let's really
twisted.
think about this for a second. Plotting is just...
Okay,
to
alright.
think about it.
Wait, hold
Plotting is
on.
just way better.
Wait a second
Okay.
here, okay? This is starting to give me Romeo and Juliet vibes, so let's just rewind for a second, okay? I think the only way that we all know we can solve this is an epic debate, okay? Take it away, Shakespeare.
Two writers, both alike in dignity, in fair Tywee where we lay our scene, from ancient grudge break to new mutiny, where civil ink makes civil pens unclean. From forth the fatal minds of rivaled groups, a star-crossed debate spreads past the moon.
Hello, and welcome to the fight of the century. On the plotting side, it's Ruby. Pantsing is Kat, and for planting, it's me.
That's right. All right, let's get it started. So plotting is the most effective, at least for me, because I'm more about the creative writing aspect, and I absolutely hate revisions. And when you plot, here, listen to this. Okay, when you plot, you're less likely to have a bunch of issues with your plot that you'll have to revise later. So, like for me, if you're like me and you despise revisions, plotting is the way to go.
I don't get that. Like you saying, oh, it's because I like the creative writing side of it. Because like for me, that's the exact reason I hate plotting. Is because like for me, it's like if I'm plotting, it's like when I'm sitting down to write, I already know what's gonna happen. Like the bit about writing that's exciting is like getting to like know more about my story as I like write it. Like I have no clue what's happening. My characters have no clue what's happening. No one knows what's happening, and I get to like just discover. It feels like I'm reading the book as I'm writing it, and like to me, that's creative writing. Oh, shots fired.
Oh.
I'm right in the middle of you two. So if I start a story without knowing where it's going, I'm terrified of this story. I will not write this story the way I want it to be. So I need a little bit of an outline to start off with, and then as I go, since my, outline is loose, I'm able to come up with new ideas as I write and change that outline to as I learn more about my story and about my own writing style. I can change that outline as I come up with new ideas.
Well, Kat, on your point of plotting being less creative, we do flesh out the idea. You just do it earlier on in the process, okay? You discover the story just before you're actually writing it. So I feel like I still, even when I plot, I always feel like, wow, I feel so creative right now. So here's the thing with plotting is for me, is that like I still will sometimes, if I feel like I want to do something here that's not in the outline, I'll do it. And that does lean towards planting, which is not really where I'm at.
So you're a traitor. You're a traitor to the
Oh,
plot.
Ruby.
Ooh.
Ruby, come on, you gotta step up your game.
Plotting is life, plotting is love.
Because you're starting to sound like a plancer here.
Hey, watch yourself. I am no pantser, I am no plancer. For the most part, I do only use my outline. But there is creative freedom in outlines, some outliners will be super extensive about certain stuff and super extensive about different stuff. And sometimes, I know, sometimes it's okay to go a little different, which, but that doesn't mean that plotting still doesn't have value to it. I'm no traitor.
That sounds like something a traitor would say. I think what you're really saying is that like the pantsing bit out is the best bit of it because like for me in my head like I just find it so much more exciting. I like feel like when I'm writing it like I normally start a story with like not really much clue of like what I'm going in for. I normally have like a basic concept that I want to do, and like normally as well I always have like tropes that I want to subvert every time I like enter a story. For some reason that's like the only thing in my head that like I'm like I really want to like subvert a certain trope whenever I'm going into like a story. But apart from that I like don't have any ideas. But then like when I'm writing it I'm like, oh, so this character is like rude. Oh, I see. This is like a really rude character. So this rude character is going to do that. And like half the time I'm like surprised at what my like characters are doing and saying. And I'm like, wow, I've like written an idiot half the time. I'm like, oh wow, that's really interesting. So that to me is like more exciting than like plotting, because if you're like plotting, you're like going, oh, this character's going to do something and like this is what's going to happen. Something Stephen King said, that he said he doesn't write, he just watches his characters and notes down what they're doing. And like for me, that's how I feel like I write, is that I'm not like in control at all. Like I'm not in control of any part of my life, let alone writing. So like for me, it's just like kind of like observing what's happening and then like writing everything down. But like what I want to ask you guys is, what got you into your method of like writing? Like what got you into plotting the wrong way, and what got you into planting the kind of wrong way?
Hey, don't forget about us planters here.
And that's what I said. Planting is the kind of wrong way.
Rude.
It's like the middle wrong. Like I could hang with you, I could talk to you, but like you're still wrong, you know.
Well, listen, the way I think I kind of realized I was a planter at heart was because I started, if we look at my current work in progress, for example, my current first draft, I started off with a really thought out plot and a very nice outline for me to follow. But as I kind of dug myself deeper into the story, the characters ended up just kind of, like you said, Kat, taking over. And they kind of just made their own story in a way, and it became something that the outline was, but also wasn't. My characters evolved it on their own. So I think that's why I like planting so much, because it's a healthy balance in the middle. That's what planting really is all about, is finding that balance between, okay, I have a plan for my story, but I am also going to let my characters, be my characters.
Yeah, well, I'm about to reveal some really scandalous information.
Ooh.
So, as previously referring to my novel addiction, the first novel I ever wrote, I did pants it.
Traitor!
Okay, guys, it was so long ago. I was
You're
12.
one
It
of
was
us.
just
No.
No. Once a pantser, always a pantser.
So basically, I started out with pantsing it, and then I found that I was terrible at writing it. So then I would write a chapter, and then I wouldn't write for like 3 months. And so I was like, okay, something about this is obviously not working. Then I Googled how do people write books, and I came across Marissa Meyer's blog, and on it she talks about outlining. And I was like, oh, okay. So I was halfway through the first draft. So for the rest of it, I kind of plantsed it, I'd say. So I've dabbled in both fields. But then at that point, I'd learned what plotting was, and I learned how, when you write a book, you can write it all out what happens before you start writing it. So then I was like, okay, I really wanted, it was November of 2018. I was like, oh, I really want to do Nano. So I plotted. And I plotted a book, and that book to this day is created. I just found that plotting, for me with my writing, it just is what works best for me. It keeps me going, it keeps me writing. Because I think if I pantsed, I would just get stuck so easily. And I don't think that can apply to every pantser, of course, because, so many very successful authors are pantsers. But I know that for me, that would never work. I would never get anything done.
Yeah, I mean, what's that? This is some information I'm going to reveal. Is that why I got started pantsing is because my English teacher told me that if you don't plot your creative stories for your exam, you're not gonna pass it. And me being a contrary child, I was like, you want to bet? Basically that was it. And in my head, ever since then, I was like,
That's
if,
amazing.
when someone tells you you can't do it this way, my head was just okay, I'm gonna do it that way now. And so I started pantsing, and I do see your point about plotting because half the time when I'm reading, I'm like, wow, I have a lot of plot holes. But for me, when I tried plotting, I would just lose motivation halfway through because I'd be like, I know what's gonna happen. So for me, it was just I write things, and then I also don't really write chronologically either. I only write just random scenes, and then afterwards I'm like, okay, now I need to make a plot out of this. But another thing I think which holds a lot of people back from pantsing is that they don't trust themselves enough because intuitively we watch a lot of movies, we read a lot of books, we basically absorb a lot of stories. I think a lot of people know a lot more about story structure than they think they do. So when you're writing that kind of not to sound hippy dippy, but the subconscious part of yourself, yeah, hippy dippy, subconscious part of yourself kind of comes to the surface and it's okay, I'm in control now. You just sit back and I'm just gonna take control of the ride. So that's why I really, really enjoyed pantsing and stuff like that. But also because I just wanted to prove my teacher wrong and be like, ha, I win.
I don't like pantsing, but I support that.
I think especially with planting, if we're talking about it here, I really relate to what you've both said. I mean, I've tried being a hardcore plotter and I've tried being a hardcore pantser, but neither of them really worked for me because the thing with me, with my writing, is that okay, I hate that I'm admitting this on a podcast, but I have writer commitment issues. I cannot do long-term projects for the life of me. I am a short-term project kind of person by heart.
It's okay, we accept you.
But
you are safe. You are loved.
But my problem with long-term projects, when I tried plotting it down to the T and not straying from my outline, it got really boring and I wasn't able, I found myself kind of trying to push through the story instead of letting my story, be this story. And instead of it being creative writing, it kind of felt more like a school assignment than me actually writing because I loved writing. So then when I tried pantsing, because I decided, plotting obviously isn't working for me. Let's just try completely pantsing it. My story was a jumbled mess. There was no plot. There was no character arcs. No one ever got where they needed to be. It was so confusing. I don't even know what that story is. Hopefully I never have to read it again. But so then I realized, okay, let's try maybe a bit of both. And that's where I am right now with my current work in progress. I start off plotting what I want my story to be, I start off where I want it to start and where I want it to finish, how I want that arc to look. So yeah, now I'm in a bit of mix of both. When I start by plotting, I have that outline and I'm ready to go. But when that plotting and that outline starts to get kind of boring and, dull for me, I kind of ditch the outline for a bit and go into my planting side a bit more. I start exploring the story. I start getting to know my characters on a more personal level, and I kind of just give them the reins and they take the story from there. And then when I get eventually too confused with my story and too much of a pantser, I shift back into plotting and I kind of organize the new creative thoughts that I had from that little pantsing section into my previous plot, and I change it to the way I want the story to look. So, plantsing, everybody, definitely try it. It's great.
No. Guys, don't listen to her.
Hey, you're the traitor here,
yeah.
Ruby.
Yeah.
Shut up! Can we move past that? Guys! It happened once! It happened once when I was 12!
I think as well it's like about what you kind of like, what you kind of read in a story as well. Like for me, when I read a book, I never remember what the plot is about a book. You know what I mean? Like I read a book and I don't like, I would walk away not knowing what the plot, like what happened in Harry Potter, who knows? I have no clue. What I remember, yeah, I know, I'm like the only person who read Harry Potter and still has no idea what's happening. What I like remember from those stories is like the characters, the themes, and like the emotions. So for me, the part of like pantsing that I like is that you get to really go into those kind of, your subconscious kind of taking over and saying these are characters and like these are like the themes that you're kind of like interested in exploring and stuff like that, rather than like certain plot points that I really want to hit. And that way it's like it feels a lot more like organic in my head. I do get why people plot, because like plot holes are like a thing that happens a lot when you pants. At the end of the day, it's about what, like if you're writing, you want to enjoy it, right? So like you want to enjoy it. So like if you're someone like me who finds that they don't enjoy writing that way, even if it might make a better story, I don't want to do it that way because I'm not going to enjoy it. And then like the creative like juices, I don't like that word, not creative juices, creative flow out of my head.
You don't like the word juices?
I don't like the word juices. I've decided it just like it feels like I'm an apple being squeezed, and I don't like that comparison.
Oh my gosh.
I don't want to be squeezed.
Oh my God.
But that's such an interesting thought, like that, like what you pick out of a story is like what you lean towards. Which I don't know if that, I mean, I do think a lot about plot when I'm reading a book, but I think just like an example outside of plotting, pantsing, I love writing romance, and so when I read a book, the romance is usually what I remember the most of. So wow, that was a genius revelation right there, Kat. Wow. So just on another point of how useful plotting is, it's very useful. When I write a draft, I can find it really easy to get super stuck in scenes that are difficult to write, in scenes that are slow. I feel like it's inevitable if you're writing, especially with longer projects, just like to feel like you're like super stuck in like a scene that you're like, this is so boring. So for me with plotting, I find it so much easier to get through those longer, harder scenes when I know like on the other side there's going to be this awesome scene that I'm super excited to write. So because I'm a bit of a romance simp, whenever there's like a romance scene in the near future, I'm always so excited to like get past the actual plot to get to the romance scene. No, I'm like, oh, character development, I'm good, gonna move on to the romance. Yeah, so guys, I'm really smart and really intentional.
That's really interesting because like I have the exact kind of same thing where like when I'm writing I get like stuck at a point, but like unlike you, I don't think, oh, I'm gonna get to that point and like just write it. I just write that scene instead. Like like I will be like, okay, I see. Like like in a scene for
True
maybe
pantsing
like
fashion.
Yeah, true this is me. Like I'll be like, oh, there's a scene I really want to write, but like you know like when you have like transition scenes, so like for example you have to get from like one point to another point and you're like, okay, that I know that needs to happen, but now I just want to write like the fun bits where like people die and stuff like that. So like yeah, I do think
Once
just,
again,
like...
emphasis on evil scientist.
But I feel like that is like literally emblematic of like the difference between like plotters and pantsers. Is like the plotters I feel like are just so like organized because they're like, oh, I have to write this scene, whereas the pantsers are like, I feel like I just don't want to, so I'm not going to right now. And then like you just leave it for future self
to deal with. So yeah, I
Wow.
definitely
That
do
is
get that.
revolutionary.
Like I've
Yeah,
been
I
working
did
on
not.
my current writing thing for over actually no, almost 2 years now. I'm only on scene 5, and that's surely because of the fact that I write at a very slow pace, especially when it comes to long-term writing. So plotting in that sense helps me, like you said, Ruby, get past that little hump of I do not want to write this scene. I don't even know what this scene is. But in the same sense, pantsing also, I know I said this before, but pantsing also helps me be creative with it. It helps me get my characters to grow and be their own person instead of me kind of forcing their own personality onto them, because I'm a very character-driven writer. So both of those really help me kind of let them.
Let them, if you love them, let them go. I think that's really interesting
Oh my gosh.
point you made, Ray, about like the speed of writing, because for me, I find pantsing is what helps me write so fast, because I normally write a first draft in about 25 days, because in my head, I know that I'm going to have to edit it later. So I just will pant really hard, get like every kind of thought that is in my head. I feel like I'm saying that really weird, but I pants really hard. I get every thought outside of my head, like just on the page, write it down, and like by the end I will have something that I can go, okay, so now looking at this kind of first draft I have, I can kind of make it into something that's actually worth reading. So I think that's really interesting, talking about like the different kind of speeds at which people write. But like, yeah, what do you
Yeah.
think, Ruby?
I wanted to ask Kat, how long are your first drafts on average? Like,
About I also write to be honest as well. Confession, I write quite short books. My books are normally
Yeah.
like about 55,000 words. I don't
Okay.
like to write long
Nano.
things. Yeah, basically nano. I literally that's the reason why, because I go like nano and I'm like, I want to write. So I normally do that like a couple of months in the year. Like this year, I've
Okay.
written about 3 or 4 first drafts, I think,
Dang, girl.
because I just like to do it.
It's just
And like
impressive.
and also a couple of screenplays as well, because I love writing. Like when I finish a like novel, I'm just getting onto my writing process. When I finish a novel, I like to write a screenplay afterwards, because I like feel like they're so
Okay.
like kind of like different.
Screenplays
That is
for the
so
win.
interesting. Yeah, I mean, similarly to you, Kat, I'm a very fast drafter. My stuff usually falls more around the 80K mark, though. I think like keeping like in regards to like what Ray said about how like plotting can make characters feel forced. I think that that's so true. I know for me, like characters, is like making really like 3-dimensional characters is one of definitely the things I have the hardest time with. So you're right. But I
Okay, I was about to say, have we got that recorded? And I was like,
Oh.
shut up. Oh my gosh.
we do have that recorded, and I'm just gonna
Oh,
make that
Kat.
my ringtone now. Play that every so often. Ruby saying you're right.
Anyways, back to what I was saying. I feel like characters and plotting and pantsing and planting, I feel like all 3 of them, they develop characters in very different ways. Just because, like, you know, plotting, you will have some semblance of an idea of what your character is going to be like. But there's a lot of wiggle room. And then for pantsing, it's just completely like letting your character discover themselves. And then I know for plotting, like, I really think about my characters and I really try and come up with personality traits, background, just like everything I can. But then I often find like characters do in the middle of a draft kind of take a voice of their own. And they sometimes I'll like discover new characteristics about them in the draft. Oh my gosh, I'm such a traitor. I'm sorry.
You're a planter, Ruby.
No, I'm not. Okay, you can look at my 20-page outlines and we can talk, okay?
20-page outlines.
Yeah,
20?
that's right. So y'all are like, you're a pantser, you're a planter. And I'm like, nope, 20-page outlines. 20-page
Wow.
outlines.
So, like, what do you include in those 20-page?
Literally, I just go single space, chapter to chapter. Here's what's gonna happen. Here's what's gonna happen in the next chapter. Yeah, so I usually do like a paragraph for a chapter. So it's nothing
Wow.
like insane. But I write decently long books, so then it adds up to like 20 pages.
You know, I think that's, really interesting too, because we're talking about this and we're calling Ruby a traitor a lot. But this kind of brings me to another point here. With plotting, pantsing, planting, they're all 3 very different ways to write a story. But at the end of the day, they also have some really similar qualities. Like plotting, obviously you have like strict outline, like you know where you're going with the story. But obviously sometimes, you're a creative person, so you're still gonna get ideas here and there, and you'll work that into your outline. Whereas like pantsing, sometimes you need a little bit of plotting. You need to know, like, okay, where am I going after this? But you really just plot as you write the story, in a way. So I always thought that was really cool how each, these three completely different sides have such, like, similarities in writing styles.
I think I can't remember who quoted it, so maybe I'm making this up, but I think someone said, like a famous writer or something said that, like, the difference between, like, plotters and pantsers is that, like, pantsers, like, plot in their head, whereas, like, plotters are just writing it down. So we're all essentially doing the same thing, but it's just, like,
Yeah.
depends on where you're doing it. Like, if you're doing it in your head, where you, like, forget things and you're, like, kind of going to the dusty crevices of your brain to try and remember that plot thread you had, or whether you've actually, like, organized and, like, writing it down and things like that. So I think that's really a good point you made, Ray, about how it's also, like, similar and stuff like that. But Ruby, I find that so fascinating that you have, like, 20-page outlines. I would love to, like, just see
Yep.
them one day, just be like in
Oh my
awe
gosh,
of,
I'll
like,
share one with
that.
you.
Yeah, you better. Because, like, I literally write, like, normally about 3 sentences or something before I start writing.
Wow. See, that's crazy to me.
Yeah, and then, like, later on I will, like, write, like, I think one of my books was literally I wrote, like, imagine the chosen one trope, but instead it's the sidekick, it's, like, told from the sidekick's point of view. That was literally all I wrote, and then I wrote the book. So, like, for me,
God.
that's the
That's
kind
just
of, like,
insane.
the level of,
I
like,
know, that's crazy.
thing I do. And then later on I will be like, oh, this is a plot hole that I will like make notes afterwards. So I think it's also about, like, whether you do it before or afterwards. Like, for me, I will normally do all the, like, kind of plotting bits afterwards, but, like, obviously for you do it before.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that, like, helps you a lot more with, like, making sure everything stays organized and you don't forget anything?
Oh yeah, I do my 20-page outlines, but then I also do 20-page brainstorming. So overall, it's like 40 pages of planning.
20. Oh my god.
Yep, that's right. Okay, the actual books are book length. But yeah, so it's like it definitely helps me though. Y'all make me feel crazy, but I'm sure some people do that. But it's just kind of like it helps me to feel like, okay, I understand this book. I know what's going to happen. And I know for me, I'm exposing myself a little bit here. When I say novel addiction, I'm not being sarcastic. I've written 4 books and I'm working on my 5th right now. So Ray's right. You guys can't see it, but Ray's gaping.
What in the heck?
I know.
No.
But because
Rice.
because I have so many different books and so many different ideas, it really helps me to figure out, okay, what's from this idea, what's from this book, what's from, it helps me to keep my thoughts, like, in order. Because I do jump project to project for revisions. So it really helps me to, like, have these documents that, like, detail all my ideas, just so that at the end of the day, like, I can figure out, okay, here was my idea for this, here's my idea for this, and then, like you're saying, like, forgetting plot threads, Kat, I don't forget them because I write them down in my 20-page idea document.
Yeah, I definitely the worst part is when I make notes for myself when I'm writing, like when I'm pantsing and I'm like, oh, you need to include something, but, like, normally what I've written is just, like, a character name, and then I'm like, what does this mean? When I'm, like, rereading it and I'm editing it, I'm like, what does this mean?
Oh my
What do you
God.
mean catapult? I don't understand. Who's getting in the catapult? Kind of thing. Because I will just jot something down. So I do think that, like, it's kind of interesting seeing the different aspects of it. But I know that, like, we've been calling, like, Ruby crazy this entire, like, podcast, but, like, I know that quite a lot of, like, the writing community are very pro plotters. I've, like, not to sound victimized, but, like, not to sound like I'm, a victim, but, like, sometimes you go into spaces and you're like, I'm a pantser, and they just go, you're a what? And I'm like, I'm a pantser. And I'm sorry, I'm not ashamed about it. But, like, I do think I think it's interesting. I do think people should try the different methods. Like, I do think you should try.
Totally.
Like, I mean, maybe one day I'll try proper plotting. Like, I plotted before. I say plotted. I've written, like, a page, not 20 pages. I've written a page before. But then, like, I didn't really like it because pantsing was better.
Yeah, my example of plotting is a very extreme one. So do keep in mind, many people do not go as extreme as I go. That's just, like, the way I am. So even if you, like, are like, wait, I thought I was a plotter, but I don't do 20-page outlines. If you plot out your story, you're a plotter. It doesn't have to be 20 pages. It can be, like, 1 page, like Kat said. A 1-page outline is still an outline. So it just depends on how much I think you stick to that during during your project is whether you're a pantser, a planter, or a plotter. Because I know
Mhm.
for me, plot-wise, I stick to it.
Also, not all pantsers are as extreme as I am. I know that I am a very
Mhm,
extreme
mhm.
pantser, and that I will literally like write down one sentence. I know that
Oh
some
my
pantsers
gosh.
are like kind of like will normally have a couple more ideas than me, but like I just like I said, I like to be controversial. I like to be living on the edge.
I think another good thing to note too is that you don't have to stay with one specific way you're writing a story. You don't always have to be a
Mhm.
plotter, you don't always have to be a pantser. Like for me, I know I am a plantser, but that doesn't we're not going to talk about that at the moment. Okay, that's not what I'm focusing on. Because for me it changes depending on what kind of story I'm trying to write. Like I write also a lot of flash fiction, just short stories. And when I write those, I'm a complete pantser. I don't even know what I'm talking about in this story. When I started, I literally sat down on my computer before I decided, hey, I want to write something, and just came up with this character and like, okay, this character's gonna go dress shopping, and then I'll come out with like a page long, fully fleshed out story, you know? So in that sense, I'm a complete pantser. But when it comes to long term projects, sometimes I have to be a little bit more of a plotter because it's not gonna work if I don't. So it's about finding what's right for you, and you don't have to stick to one thing all the time. You can switch it up. Maybe on Tuesday you're gonna be a plotter with this long this long story, and then on Friday you're gonna be a pantser with a short story. So it's all up to you and finding what works for you. So just try everything.
Mhm.
That's like I think our actually biggest advice with this whole thing. Just try a little bit of everything and find your groove. Find what works for you as a writer.
Yes.
Remember that it should be pantsing.
Hey,
Remember
we're
that
being
one-
neutral. Right now we're being
I was
nice.
trying to play Happy Family, okay?
I couldn't help it. Okay, yeah, no, but I totally agree with you, right? I think it does depend on what kind of story you're writing, because like for some stories, like confession time. Sometimes when I write screenplays, I have plotted before.
Who's the traitor now?
Who's the traitor now?
Like it was only once, I promise. It's just because I feel like with screenplays, because you have a lot less time to like maneuver like scenes, you have a very much more strict structure, I find, in screenplays, because like a film is only like an hour and a half long, like so a screenplay is only going to be like 90 pages of like mostly like dialogue and stuff. I find that in those cases, sometimes only once you might you might plot. Oh, I feel sick. But like, yeah.
Yeah, well, in regards to confession, I can confess as well. I kind of already did, but when I write flash fiction, I don't plot.
I think that's kind of justifiable though, because flash fiction is a really hard thing to plot.
I know! How am I gonna plot like 200 words?
A 20-page outline for like 5 sentences.
Yeah, no, for like flash fiction and like really, and like poems, if I ever write poetry, which does
Oh,
happen
yeah.
occasionally, you don't plot poetry. I don't know if people
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
I would be so impressed if you do.
It would be amazing if you did. I feel like maybe
know.
long form poetry.
Like,
maybe,
please
maybe.
let us know if you plot poetry. I'm so curious.
Definitely.
Now. If
I
there's
wonder if that's a
poet
thing.
plotter. Yeah, because I
Yeah.
feel like isn't poetry like about like following like your emotions? I know sometimes it's about that. Sometimes it's totally
Yeah.
not. But
I think whichever process you use, either, plotting, pantsing, or plantsing, it really only matters that you're happy with what you're writing and happy with yourself, happy with what you're accomplishing. It doesn't really matter if you have a strict outline or no outline at all, or somewhere, maybe you're somewhere in the middle like me. So it doesn't really matter whatever you use, it just matters that you're happy with it.
at the end of the day, we're all writers. We're all putting together our final products. And even just like doing a tiny bit of writing is a huge achievement because writing is hard. Let's be real. It's pretty hard. So it's just amazing that you even tried in the first place. And I feel like something that we've kind of realized just through this conversation is it just depends what works for you. Because even how like Ray was talking about how they kind of started out first with like trying to pants and then trying to plot and just going back and forth, and I did that as well. Kat, did you do that?
I've like never been a plotter, so like
So much for my beautiful
stick
point.
with
But
the method
anyways,
that like works, because I've never changed it. See, that's how you know it works. 'Cause
okay.
I've never had to change it. So
just finding what works for you is what's most important at the end of the day, I think. And for me, it's plotting. And, plotting may be superior, but that doesn't mean it's for everyone.
Hey. Oh, dangerous fence here.
I've gotten attacked as a traitor. I need to stake out my ground, okay?
I mean, yeah, I think there's like this really beautiful quote from, I think it's George R. Martin, who says that like it's about architects and gardeners. So like architects plan the house while like gardeners like nurture the seed. And I feel like that's a really beautiful way. Instead of looking at it as like plotters versus pantsers, we're all just trying to make something beautiful, right, guys? Like no, we still want to fight.
We're just like, no.
But I
So
definitely
bad.
agree. The theme and message of the story is so much more important than the way you're doing it. If you're able to communicate what this story is about, what it's trying to achieve by existing in the world, if you're able to communicate that to your audience, the method behind doing it doesn't matter because you were able to get that message across.
Yeah, I mean, I guess now that we're all playing happy families, this is nice. But at the end of the day, I think it's a front because guess what, guys? You at home, you need to pick a team now because all stories need
Yup.
conflict. Whether they're pantsing stories or whether they're plotting stories, they need conflict, and here's the conflict right now.
So, listeners, writers, readers, it is up to you to choose which one of us gets to set the flag on the moon and claim it. Plotters,
Answers.
Or plantsters.
this is the fight of your life.
One of the most important decisions.
You have to hurry. Visit the official Tywee Podcast Instagram's page at Moving Right Along Podcast and vote which side you're taking on the poll. The decision is all yours.
And that's all on plotting, pantsing, and planting your stories.
Head over to the poll and pick your side now. We'll be announcing who won this debate in episode 3. But until next time, writing cadets, we'll see you on our next adventure.
Yeah, and I mean, guys, let's look on the bright side. At least this story didn't end up with anyone dying, like in Romeo and Juliet.
A glooming peace settles throughout space, for today a generation of writers begin to race, united all together by what brings them inspiration, now making a choice on what ignites their motivation. Farewell, listeners, and until next time, when then we will serenade you with another rhyme.
Thank you for listening to the Moving Right Along podcast made possible by the Young Writers Initiative. Get involved with Tywee on their website, tywi.org, and while you're there, why not check out the New Chapters program? Inspire young writers at your school and bring the URL to the IRL. Get involved in the Young Writers Initiative community by joining our Discord server, The Writers Town. Thank you so much to our amazing podcast crew without whom this wouldn't be possible. Our producer Simone, our assistant producer Jasmine, our scriptwriter Delaney, and last but certainly not least, our social media manager Cassette. All music is taken from filmmusic.io by Kevin MacLeod. Today you heard Take a Chance, Beauty Flow, and Canon in D for 2 Renaissance harps. All sound effects are taken from the Free Sound Project. And tune in next episode where we talk about what counts as real writing.